Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com. In this tutorial, we're going to look at dealing with SQL-related exceptions in Spring. So if you've written any JDBC code before, you will have been used to handling a lot of different exceptions. But here in our offers DAO that we were looking at in the last tutorial, we didn't handle any exceptions. And the reason for that is that Spring takes any underlying exceptions that might occur in the process of dealing with your database, and it wraps them in a subclass of data access exception. And data access exception is a Spring class which is a type of runtime exception, and that means that you're not forced to handle it in Java, but you can choose to handle it. Now you might wonder, why would we want to ignore exceptions here? And you probably don't want to ignore them unless you're just writing a little test program or a demo program. But what this does allow you to do is you can choose to handle your exception at any point in the call stack without worrying about writing throws clauses and stuff like that, because of course we can still handle a runtime exception with a try catch. Let's take a look at how this works in practice. So let's say, for example, we've got some badly formatted SQL. I'll just put a space in there. If I run this code now, we are going to get an exception, and if you look carefully, it says it's a bad SQL grammar exception. Now let's choose to handle that, not in a DAO, which would be a messy place to handle exceptions, especially if we've got lots of DAOs. Let's go further up the call stack to this app.java where we are using this DAO. And I'm going to put a try catch in here. So I'll put a try catch block in there, just using control space to auto-complete that. And actually that's slightly in the wrong place. I'll put this line up here where we get the DAO bean, and all this code I'm going to put in the try catch block. And I'm going to I'm going to catch a data access exception. Now this will catch any exception, that any kind of database related exception that's thrown from this code, or more specifically this code I should say, because as I say, Spring uses this as the parent class in the hierarchy of its data related exceptions. So but you could think of this catch block as kind of a default handler for any exception that occurs. And let's just put in here sysout, and I'll put in exception.get message, so we can get a message from the exception. And just for convenience, while we're coding here, let's also put in x.get class and do a sysout on that, because then we can see what actual class of exception was actually caught quite easily. So now if I run this program again, we can see, we'll get a message and it says bad SQL grammar, and indeed this is bad SQL. And the class here, from this line here, we see is bad SQL grammar exception. So you could put in more catch blocks to handle whichever particular exception crops up. Let's take a look at another example, just for variety actually. I'll put the SQL back how it was to start with. And let's just check that this actually does still work. So there we go, it's working. And let's go to the properties file here. Where are we? Somewhere here I've got my database configuration properties. And let's change the password to something incorrect by just putting an extra character on it. And I'll run it again, the program. And now we're getting a could not get JDBC connection exception. And that's actually of type cannot get JDBC connection exception. So let's copy that. Again, it is being caught, as we can see. We're outputting the class and we're outputting the error message. So my app is catching it. Where are we? Yeah, this one here. We're catching it, okay. Because like all the other exceptions involved here, it does have data access exception as a parent. But if we specifically put in another catch block here, we can catch more specific exceptions. So let's put in catch cannot get JDBC connection exception X. And I'll put the curly parentheses in there. And now if I just bring in the import as well with Control-Shift-O, think I've messed this up slightly. Get rid of this extra bracket. There we go. So now let's put sys out in here and put cannot get database connection. So because we're handling this specific child class first, of course, and because Java works down the catch blocks, if you know Java reasonably well, you'll recognize that we're going to hit this exception first, and we'll handle it here if indeed this particular type of exception is thrown. So now, if we can't get a database connection, we'll execute this catch block and this code, and for all other errors, we're going to execute that. So if I run this code now, then it says cannot get database connection. So of course, by using this technique, you can figure out whatever errors you might want to handle and put in more catch blocks to handle them in specific ways. Or if you don't want to handle them, you can leave out the try-catch completely. Or if you just want one generic handler for all possible exceptions, then just catch data access exception. So that's it for this tutorial, and until next time, happy coding.